movie day on this show, and indeed it will be. We're going to talk to Jason Solomons a bit later about things that you can watch at home, because obviously you can't go to the movies at the moment. But there are still people out there making films. Some of the big productions are still going ahead. And I know that how tough it has been for them, because I know people who work on them and they've had to be incredibly rigorous and whatever. But there's also people out there making short films and small films and little London movies, and young filmmakers doing their best. And one of those is on the line now. He's Max McGee. He's very much a London boy, and he's made a London trilogy of short films that you can watch on the internet. And he's on the line now. Hello, Max.
Hi, Robert. How are you doing? Thank you for having me on.
That's all right. Thanks for coming on. Because I know just how tough it is to get films made, particularly when you're young in that industry. Yeah,
definitely.
What's your background? What led you in to want to be involved in movies?
So I always enjoyed acting at school. I always had a keen interest in drama. I actually did a business degree first, but halfway through I realised, my calling is definitely to be involved in the film industry. And I've always loved film since, I was 4 or 5 years old. So I actually, after my degree, I started taking acting lessons in London at a school called Identity,
right.
3 days a week. It's in Brixton, actually, which was great, but it wasn't enough. So I wanted something, 6 days a week I could be fully immersed in it, because I realised within a couple of classes that acting was really something that I wanted to do with my life. And so I went to New York, actually, for a year, which was an amazing experience. And then when I came back to London in middle of 2019, obviously you're really excited you graduated, but then you realise just how competitive it all is, and
now you got
I wasn't getting the right auditions, and exactly. So sorry.
No, I was going to say, so acting is your background, and yet these films, you've had to write them, you've had to do everything.
Yeah, so I've written them, I've starred in them, and I've produced them as well. Yeah, so...
What's wrong with directing?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm fortunate enough for Tony McGee, who's my dad and also my business partner. We have a production company together.
Right.
He's got a wonderful eye, so he directed it, and we work really well together. He's got a brilliant eye, and he brought the stories to life really well.
So your dad's a photographer. And Tony's a friend of this show. He's been on this show before, and very much every inch one of the great London photographers.
Indeed.
But you still got it's still very different.
So he wants to become a director. So in a way, we're helping each other, give each other opportunities. So it's just worked really well. So the first film that I wrote was called Shattered. So I live in Old Street, obviously really close to the city. And every day I'd see guys in suits, girls in suits going to work. And I'd always imagine that they'd, live these other lives outside of work. And so that kind of is where the story for the first film was born from. It was about a criminal defense lawyer that basically over the course of one day, his life falls apart. And it was interesting. So I wrote that and I starred in that, and it did really well. It won a semi-finalist place at Rhode Island International Film Festival last year. And then it's actually available on Amazon Prime as well. So that was really successful. But we had a screening at the Dolby screening room in Soho Square, which was, really a successful evening. But then a week later was the start of lockdown. So then it was quite a turbulent time. It was many highs, but also many lows. So,
lockdown has been very, very difficult for anybody, particularly in the creative industries. It's been difficult for musicians. It's been difficult. So, how come you thought, well, I don't care, I'm still going to make some movies? Because you've made another 2 since, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. So, obviously, like everybody, we're all sitting around, and it was an untold time for everybody. Nobody's been in that situation before. And I thought it was very cathartic writing. So I started writing, what am I surrounded by? I was just influenced, obviously, by the pandemic, and I wrote a film called Auto, which I started writing in March, had the final draft ready by May, and we had to sort of wait until August to shoot it because obviously you weren't allowed to shoot. And so it's a story about a ex-military gun for hire that's working in London, and he's tasked with transporting a vehicle across London at night during a global pandemic. But the pandemic that he's in is like in extreme form. It was very cathartic, sort of getting it all out, all my feelings, like, you know, the anxiety that the pandemic was causing. And
how difficult is it to just go out on the streets of London and shoot? Do you have to get all the permissions and all of that?
So obviously on public streets, you're able to film as long as obviously you're not getting unwilling members of the public in the film. But one of the benefits was because it was obviously the end of lockdown when we started shooting. Also,
streets were empty, I guess.
The streets were empty, and that fit the story so well as well. Obviously, because it's set in that reality. So it was actually it worked in our favour, and obviously we shot it at night as well, which meant it was even more empty.
And then the third one is called Thames.
Yeah. So also was submitted to festivals, and it did really well. It got selected for a festival in Paris, in London and Toronto as well, and it's also on Amazon Prime. And then we just thought, well, yeah, I've got to make a trilogy of London shorts, 3 different characters, 3 different realities. But I like to imagine they all coexist in the same city, these 3 characters. So this new film, Thames, it's a black and white piece. It's a film noir, and I wrote it, I believe, I started writing it in November or the end of October, and we shot in the second week of January with a very limited crew, which, I mean, an amazing crew on all 3 films, to be honest, to get them made, especially in the last 2 in the current environment. And yeah, Thames is a story about Brexit. So another anxiety-inducing film, and basically another cathartic piece. For the last 5 years, all of the news has been about Brexit, and it's caused a lot of confusion, I believe, certainly for me and the younger generation. So it was just sort of nice to get my feelings out about it. But it's an extreme reality. It's about the UK is on the brink of war with Europe. So it's not just leaving the EU, it's actually...
These are short films, but you've chosen quite big subjects, haven't you?
Yeah, so I think I think the reason why our films have been successful is, firstly, I mean, they're low budget. We really have made them on a shoestring budget, but the production value is high. You know, they look like features, and that was always the intention.
Is it easier to do that now, do you think, with the technology?
Definitely, yeah, 100%. It's easy to get your hands on a 4K camera, and the editing software. We have an amazing editor called Luke Thompson, and he's able to, you know, do amazing things with the footage that we've got. So yeah, it's a good time to be making films, definitely. Especially distribution is a great thing because of the internet. You're able to get your film out there and show it to your friends and family, but beyond, you know, across the world. Still
a tough time to make films pay for themselves, I guess so.
Yeah, 100%. I think much like music with streaming, only a select amount of artists get paid for their streams, but a significant amount anyway. And it's a similar thing with getting your film on something like Amazon Prime. You really don't break even on the budget, put it that way, but it's more about the exposure, and it's building towards, as a company, as myself, I've written a feature film called Appearances, which is also set in London, best city in the world, obviously. And so these 3 films will help us raise money for that and sort of show people what we can do. So
is that what comes next?
Yeah, so just raising money for that at the moment. I wrote that during the last couple months as well. And it's an exciting piece.
How can people see the films?
So Auto and Shattered, the first 2, they're available on Amazon Prime. And Thames, my new film, which comes out tomorrow, it premieres on YouTube tomorrow.
Right.
So everybody can see that at 6 p.m. tomorrow evening.
And if people out there are listening to this, particularly younger people, whether they want to be actors, directors, camera people, whatever it might be, what message would you have for them? Because there is an awful lot of talent out there, but it's sometimes, film in particular, is daunting, isn't it? I mean, you know, you are lucky. You've got your dad, and you've got you've got a sort of a support mechanism around you. Sure. I guess.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. Well, I think the first thing is to sort of believe in your imagination, to trust yourself and know that what you're trying to tell is a valid story and people will resonate with it, definitely. Obviously, it's nerve-wracking, especially the first film, the first time you're showing it to people. You're exposing your mind, your thoughts, and you don't know what the reaction is going to be like. But I think it's just about doing it. And then once you do something, you realize it's not as daunting as it once was. And I think definitely a key thing is having a great crew. So people you trust on set, people that are reliable, and you help each other, I mean,
it's a collaborative business, isn't it, movie making? People say that, but until you've been on a film set, you don't realise how much that's true.
100%. From everybody, from the grip to just the runner to all the way to the edit. It's without each incremental stage, the film wouldn't be possible, basically. And it's amazing to be surrounded by people that are passionate about film on every step of the way, and it's inspiring as well, and it pushes you to work harder on set, to do it again, to basically test yourself.
Max, well done, mate.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
That's Max McGee, filmmaker of the London Trilogy. That's Shattered and Auto and Thames. And as I said, it's Cinema Day on this show, and we're going to be talking movies a bit later with Jason Solomons. But for now,